Hey guys, Dave and Len here. This is Wargame Chat. Today we're going to talk about games we'd like to see in the future. I'll start off. I'd like to see stuff about the Rhodesian War, more games about. There hasn't been many games about that. I'd like to see a lot more about that. I know it's not going to sell a lot of copies, so it'd probably have to be like a magazine game or something, but that's the first thing I can think of. The Rhodesian War was really interesting. It had all these mercenaries, and these were like really high quality mercenaries, many of them like British sass and stuff, so they were outnumbered like 10-1, but when they go into combat, I mean, they'd have an enormous kill ratio and stuff. They did really well in that war. Unfortunately, they were so outnumbered that at the end they lost their country, but it was not due to lack of ability or lack of morale or anything. These were great soldiers, these mercenaries they had. What about you? What would you like to see?
The rise of the Roman Republic. All ancient Rome games seem to focus on the Roman civil wars and the Punic wars. They had a lot of Rome had a lot of close battles, gaining control of the Italian peninsula, and I love to see them fighting against Etruscans and Sabines or whatever. And there's a few battles, a few wars in early Roman Republic that would be interesting, because after a certain point, Rome becomes this military machine that crushes everybody in their sight. So
I'd like to. There's been a few games about the Falklands conflict, and these games basically, the ones that I've played, I think I've played like 2 of them, basically did the whole war where you had the air, naval, and land combat. I'd like to see something that's just about the land combat, and like when they're fighting, or where was it, Goose Green or something? I haven't read about it in a while, but I'd like to see something just focused on that instead of like the whole campaign, just specific battles or something. That would be kind of interesting.
I doubled that because in the Falklands campaign, the Navy and the Air Force, they have the roles. The Argentina stayed in port mostly, except for a few ships that ventured out and got sunk.
Yeah.
And of course, the British had a few ships sunk by exocets. Yeah. But I think the land campaign is overlooked because actually what happened was that they were outnumbered. And sometimes, even though the Argentines had a conscript army, and
they put up a fight. I mean, until their morale ran out. They did put up a good fight.
Yeah, they had a lot of good defensive terrain. So you had all these units are doubled in defense, and the Brits actually had problems with their logistic train moving up supplies. So there were like pauses in the campaign.
Yeah, they had a CH-47 Chinook the British Army was using. I guess they lost several Chinooks aboard that Atlantic conveyor or whatever the name was of that container ship that was hit by the Exocet missile. So they only had one heavy lift helicopter, and this was like the most used Chinook in history. I mean, it was ferrying troops around, like 80 troops at a time and stuff. It was like a workhorse of that war. So this one helicopter itself, really contributed to the war effort.
Yeah, because I think like the Royal Marine Regiment, if you had to hike about 30 miles, which nowadays is, in modern armies are used to be driven to places. So they, with a full pack load, they had to march 30 miles and it would try the Napoleonic Army. Okay.
Not the French Foreign Legion, though, because in their basic training they have to do I think a 50-kilometer march, which is in full equipment, which is 30 miles, I believe. Yeah, so they're used to it. When I was in the military, we never marched more than 13. I think the most we did was 15 miles or something. That was it.
Okay. Let's see. A lot of World War II. I was thinking there were games on subjects that I haven't seen, but lately in the last couple of years, since I subscribed to 4 different magazines, a lot of the subjects are covered. Because I remember S&T had one about this campaign in Western Africa, which at times could be actually kind of interesting. I keep on looking at it. I might play it. And of course, we had the one about the
Toyota Wars.
Oh, yeah, that was another one. Actually, that's something they could... More wars in Africa.
Yeah, I was about to say that, yeah. I haven't played much about the wars in Africa other than that Liberia game, which was completely insane, but it was actually a cool game. That and Toyota Wars from Strategy and Tactics magazine. Toyota Wars wasn't as good as I thought it was going to be. So
that was overly complex.
Yeah.
The guy was an expert on the subject, but not the experienced game designer. So he's throwing everything in, but the kitchen sink in, and some of the things he could actually end up well. Because for instance, you had a guerrilla warfare factor, and then you had conventional combat. So the Libyan armored units have this big number for conventional combat. For guerrilla warfare, they have one. If you have a couple guerrilla units, you could actually rout that armored regiment, which I could see in this war is actually realistic. So, yeah, more wars in Africa, both this century and the previous century. There's more to Africa than Zulu.
Yeah.
You know, Rook Strip, we've done a lot.
Yeah.
And Ishawanda, we've done that a few times. But I know the French in West Africa had a few battles. And
there's all that French Foreign Legion stuff that went on near, what was it, Algeria and stuff.
And I don't know, Portugal and Germany surely had some.
Yeah, what war was that? I read an article about the Portuguese in Africa. I can't remember what country they were in, but it was pretty interesting. Yeah, something like that, yeah.
They had one country, Angola, on the west coast, and I figured what they had on the east coast. And one of the goals they were trying to do is figure out a way to unite them or connect them. Because I think they had to go through West Africa. Union of South Africa or something. I'm not sure how that went. So, yeah, that'd be kind of interesting.
Yeah. Also, in Central America, there's been all sorts of insurgencies and stuff. There's been some games on them. I'd like to see more on them, though. I mean, like, there's not too much, like, remember when, I don't know if any of you were alive in the 80s, but probably most of you were. There was all the talk about the Contras and stuff. I'd like to see a game just about Contras.
Yeah.
I don't know if any exist, but I haven't played any that are about that, but I'd like to see something like that. That would be cool.
I'm almost certain there were, but I can't name them. One thing is like South America's Wars of Liberation. I think I've seen one or two strategic level games, but there were a few Napoleonic. I'm surprised the Napoleonic people haven't done more on this subject. So, I mean, it's strange you go from those big Napoleonic, then you one battle that's considered like the turning point for Bolivia, or who's the great liberator? He had like 5,000 troops, and the other side had, I think, a few thousand more, but that was the great battle that won the War of Liberation, and there were a few other conflicts too. You know, actually a battlefield level for the South American wars.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Anything else, sir?
No.
All right, that's all I got, too. We'll have a new topic for next week. Have a good evening.
All right.